The sweep was unprecedented. 171 operatives tied to the Sinaloa cartel were arrested in a single, coordinated strike across New England. In just 1 week, the DEA's New England Field Division, with support from local, state, and federal partners, executed an operation that tore through cartel networks. These networks had embedded themselves in communities from Lawrence, Massachusetts, to small towns in New Hampshire and Connecticut. This strike was different not only for its size, but also for its precision. It was not about arresting street-level dealers one by one. The goal was to dismantle the cartel's backbone in New England in one decisive move. Behind the week-long sweep were years of patient investigation. The DEA spent months building a lattice of intelligence. This included surveillance, informants, wiretaps, undercover buys, and shared data from its 300 offices worldwide and 69 partner countries. This global intelligence web showed how the Sinaloa cartel had embedded itself in New England life. They were not just operating from the shadows of Mexico. They were running business-like networks from within American neighborhoods. The DEA's goal was to map the hierarchy: who managed supply, who laundered profits, and who controlled shipments. They then planned to strike all at once. The arrests were spread across 3 states: 49 in Massachusetts, 33 in New Hampshire, and 64 in Connecticut. These were not random numbers. They reflected a strategy of simultaneous strikes. By hitting targets in multiple states at the same time, law enforcement prevented suspects from warning each other or fleeing. The synchronized raids created shockwaves through the network. In a matter of hours, entire distribution corridors collapsed. For the first time in years, the cartel's operatives in New England woke up to find themselves surrounded, their communications cut, and their leadership decapitated. At the heart of the operation was Lawrence, Massachusetts. For years, authorities had identified Lawrence as a major hub for cartel operations in the region. Drugs flowed into the city and were then distributed outward into Boston, Manchester, Hartford, and dozens of smaller towns. Lawrence became a staging ground for fentanyl, methamphetamine, and counterfeit pills designed to mimic legitimate prescription drugs. Targeting Lawrence was not symbolic, it was tactical. By striking the epicenter, the DEA aimed to cripple the supply chain that radiated into 3 states. The seizures confirmed the scale of the operation. Nearly 500 pounds of drugs were taken off the streets, including fentanyl, methamphetamine, cocaine, and counterfeit pills. The authorities highlighted the cartel's use of social media to market these pills directly to young people. Platforms like Snapchat and Instagram became pipelines for poison. By removing these shipments, the DEA was not just striking the cartel's bottom line, it was also preventing deaths and saving families from the devastation of addiction and overdose. The key to the sweep's success was targeting high-level members of the cartel's U.S. networks.
Before we get to that, I need your help. I'm trying to hit 50,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and I need your help. So I would really appreciate it if you could subscribe and help me out.
Arresting low-level dealers only causes a temporary disruption because cartels replace them within days. Removing coordinators, managers, and operatives trusted with oversight creates gaps that cannot be easily filled. The 171 arrested were not just expendable couriers. Many were individuals the cartel relied on to maintain distribution lines and cash flows. Their removal meant long-term fractures in the cartel's ability to operate smoothly in New England. Intelligence played a decisive role. The DEA used global resources, drawing on tips and surveillance from foreign offices that tracked the movement of drugs before they even reached U.S. soil. The international scope of the cartel's network required an international response. The DEA demonstrated this with Project Portero in Arizona and now in New England. This was not about chasing dealers. It was about coordinated strikes based on a full picture of cartel logistics. The arrest showed what happens when global intelligence is fused with local enforcement. A network that once seemed untouchable crumbles overnight. Authorities were blunt about the stakes. The Sinaloa Cartel is the single most dominant drug trafficking organization in New England. It is responsible for most of the fentanyl entering the region. Fentanyl overdoses have devastated communities, spiking year after year. Families are blindsided by counterfeit pills that look safe but kill in minutes. The DEA made it clear that every day without action meant more overdoses and more deaths. This sweep was urgent. Waiting longer would have meant more lives lost. The arrests also sent a deterrent message far beyond New England. For the cartel, losing 171 operatives in 1 week was not just a financial hit, but a psychological one. The sweep showed that their networks were not invisible and their operatives were not untouchable. Cartel members now had to question how much law enforcement knew, how many informants were inside, and how many phones were tapped. That kind of paranoia disrupts cohesion, slows operations, and breeds mistrust among members. In the world of organized crime, fear can be as damaging as handcuffs. The urgency was supported by numbers. Arrests were up nearly 50% compared to the prior year. Hundreds of pounds of narcotics were seized, and counterfeit pills were taken out of circulation before reaching high schools and colleges. The DEA emphasized that the fight is ongoing and that the cartel will try to adapt, but this operation proved the U.S. can adapt faster. For once, the cartel was on the defensive. In press conferences, officials framed the arrests as both a tactical and symbolic victory. Tactical because they disrupted real supply lines and removed dangerous operatives. Symbolic because they proved that global cooperation, interagency intelligence, and decisive action could dismantle networks that had once seemed invincible. The operation became a blueprint for how to strike cartel influence in other regions, target leadership, act simultaneously across jurisdictions, integrate global intelligence, and strike with urgency. For years, communities across New England felt overwhelmed, watching the overdose crisis get worse. They felt powerless as cartel influence expanded. Then, in one coordinated week, the power dynamic shifted. The cartel that once seemed untouchable was brought down. The arrests shattered the illusion that cartel operations are a distant problem. They showed a logistics and supply chain that ran from Central America to the Northeast United States with frightening efficiency. What investigators found was not a scattered collection of criminals. It was a disciplined infrastructure of hubs, routes, and safe houses directly tied to the Sinaloa Cartel's command. At its heart was Lawrence, Massachusetts, which had been transformed into a regional epicenter where fentanyl and methamphetamine were stored, cut, and redistributed. The sweep revealed that the Sinaloa Cartel had built a pipeline embedded in everyday communities, which ran quietly until it was ripped into the open.
Before we get to that, I need your help. I'm trying to hit 50,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and I need your help. So I would really appreciate it if you could subscribe and help me out.
The arrests revealed a shocking level of coordination. Semi-trucks carried product, stash houses doubled as warehouses, and operatives worked in plain sight within ordinary neighborhoods. The sophistication of the cartel's supply chain was a major residue left behind. For cartel members still at large, the memory of comrades dragged out in front of families serves as a constant reminder. No one is beyond reach. The public nature of the arrests ensures that the humiliation lingers, echoed in news reports and the cartel's own internal communications. The arrests were a calculated strike designed to signal something far larger, the beginning of a relentless campaign to dismantle cartel operations embedded deep inside U.S. territory. For years, the cartel presence in American communities had been dismissed as an abstract threat. This operation shattered that illusion. It exposed how cartel networks operate in New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and beyond. It showed that federal agencies are now prepared to fight them directly, inside the domestic zones where they profit most. The scale of the arrests was staggering, but the number itself was only part of the story. These were not random low-level dealers. They were part of an organized distribution system. By dismantling this lattice, the DEA and partner agencies struck at the connective tissue that ties local drug markets to cartel command and control structures. What makes this crackdown historic is its place within a broader strategy. This was not an isolated enforcement action, but part of a pattern that includes initiatives like Project Portero. That project targets cartel gatekeepers. By focusing on these high-value nodes, law enforcement is not just cutting off supply temporarily. It is choking the very channels through which the cartel sustains itself. Prosecutors can hold leaders accountable for the entire web of crimes committed by the enterprise they command. For decades, communities watched cartel figures live like untouchable kings. RICO pierces that armor. It tells residents that justice will not stop with street-level dealers. It will climb the ladder until the architects of violence are held accountable. Parallel to the legal front is the intensification of financial tracking and sanctions. The Sinaloa cartel survives on money, billions of dollars laundered every year. The U.S. Treasury's Office of Foreign Assets Control has weaponized the Kingpin Act to designate cartel operatives and front companies, freezing their assets and isolating them from the global financial system. Every dollar traced and blocked represents not just a financial loss, but a disruption of the logistics that keep the cartel alive. When financial sanctions choke access to global banking, the empire begins to starve. The Treasury is cutting off oxygen. The third pillar of the next steps is the evolution of military-civilian fusion operations. Today, agencies like the DEA are integrating with military counterparts to create hybrid task forces that blend intelligence, surveillance, logistics, and tactical strike capabilities. The Organized Crime Drug Enforcement Task Forces and Homeland Security Task Force have become the nerve centers of this fusion. The model is clear. No single agency can defeat cartels, but a fused system can overwhelm them. This strategy reflects a whole-of-government approach. It is not enough to raid stash houses. Success depends on weaving together legal, financial, intelligence, and operational tools into one relentless campaign. The arrests in New England are a case study. They showed the power of interagency cooperation, but they also exposed how deeply embedded the cartel has become in U.S. communities, far from the border. For residents of New England towns who never imagined the Sinaloa cartel operating in their backyard, the arrests were a wake-up call. The cartel's reach is not confined to the border. It stretches into suburban streets thousands of miles away. If the United States falters now, the cartel will adapt, rebuild, and reassert control. Every missed opportunity to press the advantage risks lives. This is why the government's approach emphasizes urgency. Relentless pressure is the only path forward. The arrests in New England were not the end. They were the beginning. RICO charges will climb up the hierarchy, binding leaders to the crimes of their enterprise. Financial sanctions will choke the flow of cartel profits. Military-civilian fusion will break the logistics that move drugs, weapons, and cash across borders. Together, these steps form a unified front. The U.S. is no longer content to fight fragments of the Sinaloa cartel. It is fighting the cartel as a whole. The arrests were a statement of capability. The next steps are a statement of intent. The message to the cartel is unmistakable. Your networks will be exposed, your money will be seized, your leaders will be prosecuted, and your influence on American soil will be dismantled piece by piece until nothing remains. This takedown was just the start. The fight isn't finished. On your screen is the next video. Click the video, it opens right away, and you'll see the cartels crushed even harder.